I had lived in Cedar Grove for many years, and I felt lucky to have a respected man like Pastor Andrew Patterson as my neighbor. People God puts in our lives to remind us of goodness, my mother always said, and I felt that was so true of Andrew. He always wore a gray suit, carrying an old brown leather Bible. He had a warm voice and kind blue eyes. He moved in next door with his wife and 3 children. His wife Sarah seemed a little shy, but I figured it was just moving to a new place and needing time to adjust. Their children, Emma, Michael, and Grace, were all very polite, always nodding hello when they saw me in the yard. Pastor Patterson held prayer meetings at his house for people who couldn't make it to church, often visited the hospital, and was always ready to help when someone was having a hard time. When a widow down the street fell and broke her leg, Pastor Patterson went shopping for her every week, getting her what she needed. Another family was having money troubles, and he quietly paid for their child's school fees. It was admirable and respectable, such a perfect family. I often said that to my wife, Margaret. But she had a different feeling about them than I did. Margaret thought it was odd that the Patterson family never had visitors. Sarah always wore long sleeves, even on hot summer days. I told Margaret she was noticing too many little things, that it was normal for people to want their privacy. Then one day, I realized Sarah wasn't around as much. When I asked, Pastor Patterson explained that she was taking care of a relative in another state. With a sad smile, he said he missed Sarah a lot, but family always came first. But Margaret was suspicious. She said she hadn't seen Sarah come back for a visit, not even for her daughter's birthday. I explained that not everyone could travel often, especially a busy pastor's family with so many kids. A few months later, Michael, the oldest son, also disappeared. Pastor Patterson proudly announced that he had received a scholarship to a boarding school on the East Coast. Emma, their oldest daughter, started to become quieter and more withdrawn. When I asked how she was doing, she would just nod and quickly walk away. I once saw her crying by the trash cans behind their house one afternoon, but when I went to ask if she was okay, Pastor Patterson came out and called her inside. I never forgot the scared look in Emma's eyes at that moment, but I just thought it was a normal father scolding his daughter, plus Sarah had been gone for a long time. Margaret worried about the girl, but I defended Pastor Patterson. It wasn't easy for a man to raise a daughter on his own. A few months later, Grace, the youngest child, was also gone. Pastor Patterson said she had moved in with her mother. Now only he and Emma were left in that big house. Emma grew into a beautiful young woman, but she always looked tired. Margaret noticed Emma often left the house alone in the evenings, sometimes as late as 10 p.m. She would go to the convenience store and come back with bags of different sizes. Margaret thought Pastor Patterson was making Emma do too many chores. Of course, I disagreed with my wife's opinion. In the time that followed, Pastor Patterson remained active in the community, always ready to help others. He started a support program for troubled teens and organized family workshops. More and more people admired him. One winter night, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I was startled to see Emma standing outside in the yard, staring straight at our bedroom window. I turned on the light, but she was gone. Margaret thought I had dreamed it, but the footprints in the snow were still there the next morning. Margaret and I were very confused. If it really was Emma, maybe she needed help? A few weeks after the night Emma was in the yard, I started noticing other strange things. A strong chemical smell would sometimes come from the Pattersons' basement, especially on the nights Emma went out late. Margaret said it smelled like strong cleaning fluid, the kind auto repair shops use. One morning, I woke up to the sound of sirens. 3 police cars were parked in front of the Patterson house. Margaret and I rushed outside with the other neighbors to see what was happening. The police brought Emma out of the house. Then came Pastor Patterson, still in his pajamas but with a frighteningly calm look on his face. When he looked towards me, for a moment, I felt frozen by his cold stare. The neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, whispering to each other that it must be a misunderstanding. In the days that followed, the forensic team worked non-stop. They dug all over the backyard and basement of the Patterson house. The chemical smell grew stronger and stronger. Margaret had to keep all our windows closed. The newspapers revealed horrifying details. Sarah's remains were found with signs of being tied up, while Michael's and Grace's remains were scattered in plastic bags next to bottles of corrosive chemicals. And there might have been others. People who used to go to the Patterson house for prayer meetings but were never seen again. Emma had told the police everything about her father. She spoke of the years living with a monster, having to witness all the disgusting crimes her so-called father committed against her own mother and siblings. Emma herself had to carry the heavy plastic bags down to the basement. The nights she stood outside in the yard, desperately looking for a way to get help. The newspapers continued to report from the trial, where Emma recounted the things her father used to say. Patterson always claimed he had a holy mission to teach those who didn't follow his will. It started with controlling every action and word of his wife and children, then gradually escalated to violence when they didn't listen to God through him. He repeatedly said he was saving the souls of the people he killed, while using his reputation as a pastor to lure vulnerable churchgoers to his home. There, he could carry out his brutal acts of control without anyone suspecting. I sank into my armchair, reading every line of the newspaper with trembling hands. All the times I defended him, insisted he was a good man, felt so incredibly foolish. There were so many signs I had missed. Emma's scared eyes, the shouting at night that I thought was the TV, the chemical smell I thought was him cleaning. Margaret held my hand, unable to speak. We sat in silence in the living room, looking out the window at the house that was now empty. Pastor Patterson was sentenced to life in prison. Emma was taken for psychological treatment. And I would have to live with the thought that for all those years, I had slept peacefully next door to a killer. The Patterson family's house is now closed up, a dark memory for everyone in the neighborhood. This story is inspired by a true crime case. Pastor Andras Pandy, once seen as a pillar of morality in his community, was revealed to be behind a series of mysterious disappearances within his own family. His 2 wives and several of his children vanished without a trace, with false explanations and fabricated evidence used to cover up the truth. The investigation led to gruesome discoveries at Pandy's various properties, where police recovered bone fragments, teeth, and traces of bodies disposed of with chemicals. His daughter, Agnes, initially accused, then recanted, but eventually admitted to participating in these horrific crimes with her father. In 2002, Pandy was sentenced to life imprisonment. Although convicted for 6 victims, the number of missing people suspected to be linked to him may be as high as 60, and the identities of many remain unknown. My name is Joseph. Back then, I lived in Cleveland and worked a job that paid an average salary. I needed some extra cash, so I started looking for a side hustle. This is the story of my strange side job, acting as an exorcist for people who believed they were haunted by ghosts. In reality, I never believed in ghosts or demons. I wasn't a priest, and I certainly wasn't a psychic like I claimed to be in my client advertisements. I was just a guy who knew how to read people's faces and say exactly what they needed to hear to feel safe. More importantly, I knew how to set the stage to make a ceremony look real. I used a few candles, an old Bible, some memorized chants, and a very professional tone of voice. In my mind, most of my clients were just suffering from insomnia, anxiety, depression, guilt, or addiction. Sometimes it was just an obsession they created in their own heads. There were no actual monsters involved. I didn't think what I was doing was bad. I wasn't hurting anyone. I felt like I was just giving them a placebo to make them feel better. I believed that right up until the night I met a client named Ethan. It was pretty late when I got the call. A middle-aged woman was crying on the phone. She said her son, Ethan, hadn't slept for days. He was in a total panic and insisted he was being haunted by the ghost of a girl. She begged me to come to their apartment that night. I wanted to say no because of the hour, but the amount of money she offered changed my mind. Their apartment was in an old, run-down building. Ethan's mother led me into his room. She looked completely exhausted. Ethan was sitting on the bed. He was bone-thin, and his skin had a gray, sickly tint to it. His state was different from any client I had ever seen. It looked like he had been living through a nightmare, and his soul had simply withered away. Ethan told me that every night, the woman appeared closer to him. At first, she was just a blurry shadow at the end of the hallway. Slowly, she moved to the bedroom door, and then right next to his bed. He said her form became clearer every time. A distorted face, swollen eyes, dark purple bruises around her neck, and a mouth hung wide open. Even then, I figured he was just a young man suffering from delusions. I thought his mother was so blinded by love that she believed everything he said. I started setting up my equipment. I told Ethan and his mother to sit inside a circle of candles, hold hands, and close their eyes. I strictly warned them that no matter what they heard, they must not let go or open their eyes. I told them to let me handle everything. I expected to start my usual performance, but everything spiraled out of control in a matter of seconds. As I began to read verses from the Bible, my entire body suddenly jerked violently. My limbs went stiff. I felt a tingling sensation like thousands of needles stabbing me at once. I couldn't stop myself even though I was still conscious. Then, my vision went pitch black. In that darkness, 3 images appeared. I saw an old wooden table with a steaming cup of hot chocolate on it. The surface of the liquid was rippling as if someone nearby was shaking. Then, the image shifted to a filthy bedsheet being torn and gripped by violent hands. Finally, a sharp, cold light flashed. It was a silver knife, the blade reflecting the dim yellow light of an unfamiliar room. I felt my throat burning. I couldn't open my eyes or move, but I heard a shrill, raspy female voice coming out of my own mouth. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke up, I was lying on the floor. My whole body ached as if I'd been jumped by a mob, and my throat was raw. My head throbbed like it was being hit by a hammer. The first thing I noticed was that Ethan was gone. His mother was standing in the corner of the room, her face white and her eyes wide with terror as she looked at me. I sat up and asked where Ethan went, but she couldn't answer me right away. After a moment, she told me that something had possessed me. According to her, while I was reading the Bible, my body began to twitch uncontrollably, and my head snapped back. My eyes stayed closed, but my mouth opened and screamed at Ethan in a high-pitched woman's voice, "You killed me! And you're going to die the same way!" The second those words were spoken, Ethan let out a blood-curdling scream. He started slapping his own face repeatedly and then sprinted out of the apartment like a madman. Hearing that sent shivers down my spine. Even though I didn't want to believe it, I couldn't ignore what happened. I packed my things and left the apartment so fast that I forgot to take my payment. The next few days were normal, so I tried to tell myself it was just a bizarre fluke. But a week later, 2 detectives came to find me. They told me Ethan had taken his own life with a gun in a hotel room. Even more shocking, his mother had called the police claiming my exorcism was what drove him over the edge. I told the police the entire story very honestly. When I mentioned the hot chocolate, the torn bedsheet, and the knife, the detectives looked stunned. They told me those details matched the crime scene of a girl named Elsie perfectly. The investigation into her murder hadn't been made public yet. The scene had those exact 3 details. She had been strangled with a bedsheet, then stabbed with a knife, and there was an unfinished cup of hot chocolate on the nightstand. My body went numb as I listened to them. I didn't want to believe in the supernatural, but I couldn't deny what I had experienced. The final investigation concluded that Ethan was indeed the one who murdered Elsie. It was strange, but my fake exorcism became the key clue that helped the police solve the case. After that night, I never called myself a psychic or an exorcist again. I quit the side job that had made me so much money off the fears of others. I never experienced anything paranormal ever again. Before that night, I believed the world only consisted of what we could see with our eyes. After that night, I'm not so sure anymore.
I'm Anna, and my small family just moved to Columbus, Ohio, about 6 months ago. The 2-story house we bought is in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Everything was perfect for the first 3 months. I set up a cozy workspace in the downstairs den. Mike was settling in well at his new job, and Emma quickly made friends at school. We even got to know most of our neighbors, except for the man living in the house next door. Mike said he'd met him once, a retired chemistry professor named Daniel Lee. He lived alone and preferred his privacy. Then winter came, and with it, a strange feeling. In the afternoons, I started to feel tired. My mind was foggy, and I couldn't focus. Headaches appeared often, starting at my temples and spreading to the back of my head. At first, I figured it was just the lack of sunlight and my body adjusting to the colder weather. I wrote down my symptoms in a journal and tried to change my diet, exercise more, and even take vitamin D supplements, but it didn't seem to help. Then Emma started having morning sickness and trouble sleeping at night. "I think we should take Emma to the doctor," I told Mike. "I think you're just worrying too much, Sarah. We just went through a big move. Our bodies need time to adjust." Maybe Mike was right, but I was still going to keep an eye on everything. I started tracking the times we felt worst, the food we ate, even the weather. After a week, the results showed our symptoms seemed to get worse in the evenings and early mornings. One day, I felt my body suddenly and noticeably exhausted after a visit from our neighbor, Mr. Daniel. Mike thought he was pleasant, but I didn't. His eyes were too intense, his smile fake, and he always found reasons to come over more often. The situation became serious when Emma had a seizure at school. The results came back. Emma didn't have a fever, and all tests showed nothing unusual. We were sent home with advice to monitor her and come back if she had more seizures. After Emma fell asleep, I told Mike, "I think there's something in this house making us sick, and Mr. Lee is involved." Mike was surprised. "Daniel? He's very friendly. He has a chemistry degree and researches narcotics." I looked him up. "So what? That doesn't incriminate him. I've seen him lurking around the house when you're at work, and our symptoms get worse every time he comes over. You're being paranoid. Maybe you should see a therapist." I felt helpless and disappointed after talking to Mike. He insisted on defending a stranger instead of worrying about his wife and daughter. I ordered small surveillance cameras online, placing them on the porch, at the front door, and in the main ventilation room. I also bought an air testing kit and sent samples to a private lab. I started sleeping in Emma's room for her safety. One night, I heard a sound, a soft hiss, like gas escaping. I turned on the light and checked around, but saw nothing. The next morning, I checked the cameras. At 2 a.m., Daniel Lee approached our house, wearing a gas mask and carrying a small device. Then, he moved to Emma's window, but seemed to give up when he noticed the window was tightly closed. I felt nauseous and terrified. I was right. He was poisoning us, but why? I needed more concrete evidence before going to the police. I didn't tell Mike about the video or the samples until I had enough proof. The lab results came back a day later. According to the report, they found traces of methadone and hydrocodone in the air and drinking water samples. Small amounts, but enough to cause the symptoms we were experiencing with prolonged exposure. What should I do now? I couldn't confront Lee alone. I needed Mike to trust me. I waited until Emma was asleep, then sat down with Mike and showed him the video and the lab report. Mike stared at the screen, then at me. There was something in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? "We need to call the police." Number not yet. "We need more evidence." "Mike, he's slowly killing us. I'll talk to Daniel tomorrow. There might be an explanation." Mike's answer confused me even more. Why would he want to talk to the person harming his family? Why not call the police immediately? A horrifying thought suddenly struck me, but I immediately dismissed it. No, Mike couldn't know about this. He couldn't be involved. That night, I couldn't sleep. I rewatched the camera footage again and again, and then I noticed what I had missed. On one of the old videos, there was a figure at the front door at midnight. Not Daniel Lee, but Mike. He was opening the door, as if waiting for someone. I rummaged through Mike's phone when he went to the bathroom the next morning. I found messages between him and Daniel, messages talking about dosage, effects, and leaving no trace. And then I found the reason. When she's gone, I'll have everything, the insurance and freedom. Stick to the plan. Slowly, no one will suspect. I felt like my world collapsed. My husband was trying to kill me. I took screenshots of the messages, backed up the videos to a hard drive that I hid in my bag. I told Mike I was taking Emma to the doctor for further checks. Instead, I drove straight to the police station. They arrested Mike and Daniel that very day. A search of Daniel's house revealed a mini laboratory where he concocted drug mixtures. They found documents on methods of slow poisoning that leave no trace, and a large payment from Mike's secret account. Investigations showed Mike was having an affair and wanted to be free but didn't want to split assets or pay alimony. He met Daniel, a chemist who had been fired for unethical experiments, on an online forum. Together, they planned to slowly poison me, causing symptoms similar to a mental disorder and eventually leading to a seemingly natural death. Mike and Daniel were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated assault. I was granted a restraining order and took Emma away from Columbus to a small coastal town on the shores of Lake Erie, a place where we could start over. It's been 6 months since we left. Emma has recovered both physically and mentally. I'm still healing, still learning to trust again.
I'm Egan, and my younger brother is Aiden. My younger brother is my only family. The horrifying story happened 20 years ago when I was 9 years old and my younger brother was 6. My younger brother and I, like many other children, had a warm family with both parents. But that was just a brief calm before the storm for my younger brother and me. My parents began to have conflicts. It was an issue for adults, so I didn't know the exact cause. We shared a room. When I heard my parents arguing and things being smashed, I held my younger brother tightly. I told Mrs. Ira, our neighbor, about what I had heard and witnessed. She lived alone and was very fond of my younger brother and me. She taught me how to protect myself from the heart-wrenching sounds. My younger brother and I would sit facing each other. I would cover his ears tightly with my hands, and he would do the same for me. My younger brother and I would look at each other, think of happy things, and smile with joy. Mrs. Erica's method was indeed effective, but it seemed to work for my younger brother only, as I could still hear everything very clearly. My younger brother's small hands couldn't block out those heart-wrenching sounds. Many times, I saw my mother with injuries on her face and hands. Every morning when my mother prepared the food, I paid close attention. The injuries increased day by day. My mother was very tired, but never abandoned us. One time, my mother was holding Aiden, but started crying and nearly fell. It seemed like her legs and arms were very painful. I asked many times, but my mother always said she was fine. A few months later, my mother disappeared. My mother left without saying anything and didn't take my younger brother and me with her. My younger brother and I cried a lot because we missed our mother. No one was left to cook us delicious meals and read us stories before bed. Since my mother left, my father became even more irritable, aggressive, and unhappy with everything my younger brother and I did. We were extremely afraid of our father. One night, my younger brother woke up and cried loudly. I was startled awake and tried to comfort him, because if our father heard, my younger brother and I would definitely be in big trouble. "Egan, I want to see Mom," Can we go see her? My younger brother said this while crying, and I didn't answer. I tried to soothe him so he could go back to sleep. Since our mother left, my father would often take my younger brother and me to Mrs. Erica's house whenever he was away. My younger brother and I really enjoyed the time spent at Mrs. Erica's house. We loved her attention and the delicious meals she cooked. Even when our father came to pick us up, my younger brother cried and refused to go home. One night, I woke up because I was thirsty. I tried to be as quiet as possible and went downstairs to the kitchen to get some water from the fridge. The kitchen light was on, and someone was standing near the fridge. I approached and saw that it was a woman with blonde hair, just like my mother's. Feelings of joy surged within me. I ran over and called out loudly, "Mom!" The woman was startled and turned towards me. She was a complete stranger. She only had the same hair as my mother. "Are you Egan or Aiden?" she asked me with a rather annoyed tone. My father came over, pulled her closer, and ordered me to go back to the bedroom immediately. Terrified, I forgot all about my thirst and ran quickly back to my room. After I saw that woman in the house, my father started sending my younger brother and me to Mrs. Erica's house more frequently. In the afternoon, when Mrs. Erica and we were sitting on the porch, enjoying the cookies she had just baked, there are noises at night that wake me up. After that, I get scared and cry. I miss Mom. Aiden told Mrs. Erica like that. "Don't be afraid, Aiden. It's just a branch brushing against your window when the wind blows. But there aren't any trees near my window." I quickly explained to Mrs. Erica. "It's in the wardrobe. I know it very well." My younger brother continued to talk nervously. I quickly shoved a piece of cookie into his mouth to stop him. She just smiled and opened her arms to hug my younger brother and me. The sound of a car parking in our driveway meant that Dad was home. We were used to the sound of the car and Dad's schedule. Neither of us wanted to go home at all. "Hello, Mrs. Erica. Did the kids cause any trouble or inconvenience for you?" "No, not at all. They're very well behaved and lovely." While Dad checked in with Mrs. Erica, my younger brother and I hurried back home. I looked inside Dad's car and then ran into the house to look around. Once I was sure that the woman was not there, I led my younger brother into the house. That night, my younger brother woke up and cried loudly, constantly calling for Mom. No matter how much I tried to comfort him, my younger brother continued to cry. My father opened the door to the bedroom and shouted, "Why haven't you gone to sleep yet?" My younger brother, even more frightened, cried louder and continued calling for Mom. "Shut up and go to sleep. I don't want to hear any more noise from you." I held my younger brother tightly and covered his ears. "Dad, let Mom go." My younger brother's words made my father, who was turning to leave, freeze in place. "Dad, you've locked Mom in that wardrobe. Let her go." I quickly covered my younger brother's mouth and whispered into his ear with a trembling voice, "This is our secret. You must not tell Dad." I didn't think much more about it and quickly pulled my younger brother's hand, running away. My father easily caught up with us. I bit his hand with all my strength. Suddenly, a loud gunshot rang out and the door flew open. I heard the police. They demanded that my father come out immediately. It was Mrs. Erica who, hearing my younger brother's cries and my father's shouting, called the police. My younger brother and I were taken to a children's care center in the city. I remember it was a long time before we were allowed to visit home again. My father was no longer at home, and the atmosphere was very cold and desolate. When Mrs. Erica called, my younger brother and I joyfully ran to her and hugged her. "Mom has been taken out of there by the police, hasn't she?" Mrs. Erica was stunned when she saw me pointing towards a mound of earth in the garden. I witnessed everything because I was also awake that night to get some water. I knew that Mom had gone to heaven, and I always told my younger brother that. I also didn't ask about Dad because I was very afraid of him. When my younger brother turned 10, he became aware of everything. The hardships we endured made my younger brother and me mature beyond our years. Currently, we have a fulfilling life with good jobs. My younger brother and I visited our father, and shared with him our upcoming plans. My brother and I will host the wedding together. My name's Anna, 24 years old. I've just started working in a small firm in San Francisco. My job was a customer service representative. I lived alone in my apartment some 20 minutes away from my work. My boyfriend lived in that same city as I was, but due to our conflicting schedules, we could only see each other on weekends. My first week in the new company was pretty uneventful. Everything was good. In my office, I met my two newest colleagues, Alice and Oliver. They're pretty nice, friendly, and generous. On the last weekday, we decided to have a night out after finishing the weekly workload. Alice told me that it's to celebrate my first week in the office, so needless to say, I couldn't say no to that. Even if I did have a plan with my boyfriend already. So I told him about that and had to readjust our own plan for the weekend. After work, we arrived to a nightclub not far from our workplace. To be honest, I hated being here. The music was too loud that we literally need to scream just to say anything. Also, the flashing lights were very discomfortingly annoying. That's just me and my feeling. Though I know that bars and clubs were a rather popular destination, but I think it wasn't for me. I didn't remember for how long I was there. The cocktails was surely no friend with my empty stomach. I don't feel so good, guys, I told Alice and Oliver. The two colleagues happily left with me, even though I knew clearly that they still wanted to have more fun. Leaving the bar, all I wanted to do was to go home. Yet Oliver had another proposal. "We haven't got dinner yet, right?" He then suggested a restaurant that specialized in foie gras. Alice immediately voted for it excitedly. I, however, upon checking the time, wondering what restaurant was still open at 10 p.m. "That restaurant serves overnight, gal," he said. Two of them kind of dragged me into it, and there was no way for me to say no. The voyage there was kind of long and uneventful. It was the constant nagging of a hungry Alice pushing Oliver to drive faster. And me, I was just too tired to say anything. I just wanted to get over it quickly so I could go to bed. It's exactly midnight when Oliver stopped his ride in front of a small restaurant deep in the back alleys. A gentleman greeted us on our way. He introduced himself as Joey, a jack of all trade for this small establishment. Interesting. The restaurant was kinda neat, though the three of us were the only customers here. After settling down, Oliver asked for the restaurant's signature dish, while Alice was busy with choosing the beverage section. Two of them continued with their usual office gossip. Alice, since she wouldn't be driving, enjoyed her drink, while I was at my limit for alcohol consumption today. My phone rang. It was my boyfriend calling me. I went outside the restaurant for some privacy. My boyfriend was pretty worried, wondering when I would go home and whether I needed a ride. Talking with him, feeling his care, filled me with joy. Then I darted my eyes around, seeing a girl dressed in white sitting across the alleyway. Saying goodbye to my darling, I came over to check on her. She kept staring into the green shrub. Her eyes widened worriedly. "Are you all right, miss?" I asked. I'm looking for something of mine." Her voice was somewhat odd. It was very quiet, with a hint of a slight echo. I asked her whether she needed my help finding it, and she declined, saying she's going to find it soon. Seeing I was not needed, I said goodbye to her and went back inside. By the time I returned, Oliver and Alice was kinda tipsy. "What's a handsome boss like you doing here all alone?" Alice, inebriated, made a joke toward the restaurant owner. "Well, I had a few other female staff, but recently they'd left without any solid reasons, and I am still looking for their replacement. You see, I only hire female staffs."
His answer made Alice laugh. She clearly enjoyed the conversation. Well, I'm Alice, and is there any vacancy here for me? You're quite all right, Alice, but your friend seems to be a better candidate. The man then glanced at me, lowering down the dish on the table. His smirk gave me the creeps. I shuddered at that glance. Oliver laughed at the scene as if he had sensed my uneasiness. Seeing my hands were not very clean, I went to the bathroom to wash it before the meal. There, I suddenly heard a woman, seemed like she was crying. Who's there? Is everything okay? In the stall was a young girl, turning her back on me, burying her face into her hands, crying a lot. It seemed that she's wearing a waitress uniform of this restaurant. Is everything okay, miss? Hearing me, she stopped crying, then slowly turned around to me. Suddenly, she lifted her face up, arms stretched toward me. Startled by her sudden movement, I quickly turned from surprise to terror once seeing her face up close. Her face was torn to pieces, with exposed flesh hanging open everywhere, and her eye sockets were empty. All over her body, there was crimson red fluid soaking through the clothes. Bring it back to me! Bring it back! She tried to reach to me, crying in pain. I quickly booked out of the restroom, rushed over to my 2 co-workers. I told them what happened, yet they were not buying it. When the 3 of us arrived at the scene, the woman was nowhere to be found. Alice and Oliver laughed out loud, telling me that I've drunken too much tonight. But I wasn't drunk at all. To be fair, I was more sober than the 2 of them. Back to our table, we didn't see the owner there anymore. Alice told me to quickly eat up to leave this establishment. But as soon as I sat down on the table, I felt unease from a staring woman on another table. This was the white outfit woman I saw outside earlier. Have you found it yet? I asked. Almost there, she answered. What happened, Anna? Who are you talking to? Oliver, eyebrows raised, opened up to me. I told him that I had seen that woman a while ago, and now she's in the diner with us. Alice and Oliver laughed, claiming that I was joking around because there's nobody there. But I swore that she was still there, still staring at me across the diner. I have found it. That's my liver. The woman, crying out loud, pointed her finger into the piece of meat on my dish. Her words frightened me to the point that I literally dropped the dish off the table. Alice and Oliver was dumbfounded by what happened. They could only look at me worryingly. At the same time, the tattered woman from the restroom came over crying, "Give me back my body!" Both women rushed into me, yelling out a blood-curdling scream. That's it. My flight response overwhelmed me. I screamed and did all that I could to get out of that damned restaurant. A taxi flashing its headlight toward me when I was trying to run away. In my head, all the frightening scenes crashed back before it all turned to darkness. When I came to my senses, I was in the hospital with my worried boyfriend and 2 concerned colleagues. When asked about what happened there at the restaurant, I said nothing. I just wanted to forget all those scary things. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital. It was when I heard from Oliver that the restaurant owner had recently passed away. His body was discovered to be disemboweled, with all internal organs being forcefully removed. The only evidence they found at the scene was a chef knife that only had his fingerprints on it. Maybe I was the only person knowing what terrible thing had happened there to the female staffs. And you know what? I think he deserved it.
This is a story about what I went through during my nursing internship. My best friend from class, Sarah, and I were assigned to a psychiatric hospital for our clinical rotation. It was a small medical facility located in a remote part of rural Pennsylvania, so we rented a room nearby for convenience. On the first day, the charge nurse, who was our preceptor, gave us a tour and explained the rules we had to follow. The hospital was strangely quiet. The atmosphere felt heavy and stifling, maybe because it was a locked, closed-off treatment unit. The preceptor repeated one rule over and over. No matter which patient it is, absolutely do not listen to or believe anything they say. Just ignore them. After about a week of work, we started getting used to the routine. Most of the patients seemed pretty normal, so we gradually let down our initial guard. One afternoon, I happened to hear staff members talking about a patient named Margaret, who was classified as needing special management. They said she had killed her husband and 2 young kids 6 years ago, but was declared insane to avoid the death penalty. This patient was kept on the 4th floor, an area where interns like us were strictly forbidden to enter. We didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that the assigned nurses would handle everything, and our job was just to finish our tasks and clock out. One evening, as we were getting ready to leave, I briefly saw a strange woman in a nurse's uniform walking out. She turned back and looked at me for a second, and I swear she smiled. I figured it was a way of saying hello. I guessed she was the nurse assigned to check on the patient on the 4th floor. While we were completing our end-of-shift tasks, Sarah and I suddenly heard shouting. Margaret Hayes escaped. We quickly ran out and saw a patient lying on the floor. The woman claimed to be a doctor, but she looked completely panicked. "I'm the doctor! Margaret injected me with something." Right then, the preceptor's warning echoed in my mind. Under any circumstances, don't pay attention to what they say. We assumed the screaming woman was having a psychotic episode, so we took her to the isolation room. She kept trying to explain, but of course we ignored her. After completing the incident report, we clocked out. As soon as we got back to our place, my friend received an urgent call from the hospital. Her voice was shaking. "Something serious has happened." We immediately rushed back to the hospital and were stunned when we learned the truth. The woman we had locked in the isolation room was actually a doctor from another hospital who had come for a consultation. The patient Margaret had resisted, injected her with a sedative, swapped clothes with her, and successfully escaped. So, the strange woman we saw earlier, that was Margaret? I gasped after realizing everything. I couldn't help but shiver as I remembered her smile that afternoon. We never found out what happened next in the story. All we knew was that we weren't held responsible, and the incident was never discussed again. After the incident, we were still in shock and doubted everything. The hospital made us sign a non-disclosure agreement. They brought in a lawyer, and she explained that this was the best thing for everyone. We signed it. I couldn't sleep for many nights afterward. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret smile, the gentle, confident smile of someone who knew they had won. She had taken advantage of the very thing they taught us: never trust the patient. And that exact rule had become the perfect escape route for her. Sarah felt the same way. We sat silently in our rented room, not talking to each other. The guilt weighed heavier than any explanation. We had followed protocol, but that right thing led to an irreversible consequence. A few weeks later, when things had quieted down, I accidentally came across an old article being reshared online. The headline sent a chill down my spine. "Woman declared insane pleads for justice. I didn't kill my husband and children. I'm the only survivor." Attached to the article was an old photo of Margaret Hayes before she was institutionalized. A young woman, her eyes tired but not crazy, She recounted that she woke up that day to find her whole family murdered, and the only person present at the scene was her. No one believed her, and there was no evidence to defend her. Only the doctors declared her mentally ill. I read the article down to the last line. In my mind, Margaret's image reappeared with that faint smile. At that moment, was she really the psychopathic killer everyone claimed she was? Or just a woman who had become utterly desperate? The internship ended sooner than planned. As I left Pennsylvania, I wasn't sure I could continue down this path anymore. There are rules to protect us, but sometimes those very rules can turn us into accomplices to something terrible. To this day, I still wonder, where is Margaret? This is a true story. It all started when Ethan asked me to go camping. He said we needed a trip to relax after finals week, to find peace with God out in nature. We had been dating for over a year, and he always respected my decision to save myself for marriage. He came to church with my family every Sunday. Everyone loved him. We set off on Saturday morning in Ethan's pickup truck. He told me about his plan to start a charity fund after graduation and other projects in the rural area. I listened and felt so proud of him. Then suddenly he stopped the car. He said he saw something strange by the side of the road. Ethan told me to stay put while he went to check it out. About 10 minutes passed, and Ethan still hadn't returned. I got out of the truck to check the situation. Unexpectedly, I heard a sound behind me. Before I could react, a strong force grabbed me from behind. Someone covered my mouth with a cloth that smelled strongly of chemicals. I was completely panicked. I tried to struggle and scream, but the more I screamed, the more of the chemicals I breathed in. I heard Ethan yelling from a distance, and in the next second, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I panicked. I was lying naked on the forest floor. I was covered in scratches and bruises. It was dark, and the cold wind blew sharply across my skin. I couldn't clearly remember where I was or what had happened while I was unconscious. I called out Ethan's name in fear, and I was overjoyed to hear him answer. Ethan was lying a short distance from me. He was also naked and covered in wounds. Blood was running down from his forehead. When we found each other, we just held on tight and cried. He said there was a group of people wearing black robes. He thought it was a satanic cult. They had stolen everything. He tried to fight them, but couldn't. Everything happened too fast. But having him there made me feel a little less scared. We started walking for a while, hoping the spot wasn't too far from the main road. After walking for some time, it was still pitch black all around us. Ethan thought we needed to find shelter first. If we kept going, we would just get more lost and suffer terribly from the cold. Suddenly, Ethan spotted a canvas bag hidden behind a large rock. Inside, there were canned food, a knife, a lighter, and 2 sleeping bags. Ethan suggested that the people had forgotten these items. After we found a safe and warm spot, we ate some food. We encouraged each other, believing we would be able to get out of there the next day. But contrary to what we thought, we were stuck in the woods for many days. I was desperate and couldn't stop crying. I kept asking why God would let this happen to us. There were times when I just wanted to lie down and wait to die. But Ethan wouldn't let me give up. He hugged me, wiped my tears, and said we would get through this. He built a makeshift shelter using branches and the canvas bag. Every night, he sat guard to make sure no wild animals or those people came back. He tried to keep my spirits up. He told funny stories and sang hymns. I saw how exhausted he was. The wound on his forehead was getting infected. Ethan ate very little, always giving the food to me. On the fourth day, I ran a high fever. My body wouldn't stop shaking, even wrapped tightly in the sleeping bag. Ethan held me all night, using his body heat to keep me warm. He whispered prayers. I was touched, secretly thinking this was real love. The next morning, my fever broke, but then Ethan caught a fever. Ethan suggested I keep him warm the way he had done for me the previous night. Of course, I didn't refuse. He held me close, his hand gently stroking my arm and back. Lena, after everything that happened, do you still think we should wait until we get married? What do you mean? God put us together. You and I went through this together. This must be God's will, so I cherish you and our love even more. But I will not change my mind, Ethan. Ethan went silent and stopped all his actions after my reply. After a while, he fell asleep, surely from pure exhaustion. I also quickly drifted off to sleep. On the sixth day, we were almost completely desperate. The food was gone, and we were both severely dehydrated. Luckily, we were rescued. A hunter found us. He called the police, and we were immediately taken to the hospital. Fortunately, both of our health recovered quickly. There were no serious problems. We video called all the time to update each other on how we were doing. On the third afternoon after being rescued, 2 police officers came to see me. They asked me about everything that had happened, especially the bag of supplies that Ethan found by accident. They showed me the purchase receipt and security camera footage of Ethan buying everything himself 3 weeks earlier. Then they showed me photos of the scene. There was absolutely no evidence that anyone else besides Ethan and me had been there. They checked the wound on his forehead. It didn't look like it was caused by an impact. It looked like he had intentionally hit his head on something, perhaps a tree trunk. Seeing that I had no reaction, they continued and showed me a video recording of the interrogation. Ethan sat in the interrogation room crying and confessing everything. Ethan had planned it for weeks. I love her too much. I thought if we went through something extreme together, if I saved her, she would see that we belonged together. There would be no reason left to wait. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted us to be closer. I immediately turned off the video. I couldn't listen anymore. I thought we had survived a nightmare through love. But the truth was, I had been living in a terrible play orchestrated by Ethan for a disgusting purpose. Ethan had to face the appropriate sentence, and I was left with deep psychological trauma. The days that followed were truly awful, but my parents were always by my side, caring about every emotion and thought I had. After a few months, I was doing better, but that doesn't mean I was completely over it. People say the most painful thing isn't being betrayed, but realizing you were never truly loved. What I thought was love was just carefully disguised manipulation. And the most horrible thing is that I'm ashamed to admit that I still remember the feeling of being held by Ethan on the night I had a high fever. My body still remembers that warmth, even though I know it was also part of his plan.
My name's Sandra, 35 years old. I'm a single mother with a 10-year-old daughter, Lainey. We were enjoying a rather cozy life due to my established real estate firm. I was going to be assigned a renovation project of an abandoned high-rise in downtown city. This project I had always been wanting for the last 20 years. It wasn't until now that I had enough finance to run it. This project was my father's legacy. But when the project went to its final stage, my father's company encountered some heavy problems and went bankrupt. I brought it back years later and running a renovation for his sake. On the day of site survey, I went along with the construction crew and Lainey. She was so excited and ran around the place with all her youthful joy. After just a moment, my eyes moved off her. Lainey was gone from my sight. I dragged myself all around the place calling for her, but there's no response. I called Lainey on her phone, and she said she's on 13F. Lainey turned the front camera on so I could see the surrounding. Upon seeing what she was showing, both familiar and creepily alien, I yelped aloud at Lainey, telling her to come out of there quickly. However, the phone suddenly lost its connection, so I frantically ran over that accursed place to get her. This building wasn't finished yet, so the only way from 6F to 13F was using the stairs. The high heel I wore really became a nuisance, where the leather ground on my skin and bled me. The moment I saw the familiar shape of my daughter, I rushed to her side. Lainey's action puzzled me. She was putting her hand over the picture of two hands holding each other on the wall. I dragged Lainey out, asking whether she was all right, only to have her say that the signal was really bad, she couldn't hear anything. Lainey and I went back down, and before leaving, I glanced back at the hands on the wall, and my stomach turned. I felt guilty thinking about it. In the evening, we, just like every day, would have dinner and talked about what happened in the day. Around 10 p.m., Lainey went to her room, at which point I bid her goodnight and went to my room as well. Around midnight, the commotion from Lainey's room jolted me from my sleep. I went around and saw her sleeping soundly on her bed. Sensing nothing out of the ordinary, I turned back, then suddenly felt a chill by Lainey's whisper, "Mom!" So I turned around, asking her, "What's up, honey?" Lainey was still there in her sleeping position, unchanged by what I saw before. Might just be my mind speaking, I thought to myself, before tiptoeing back to my room to not wake my daughter up. Next evening, I had to stay up rather late, until midnight to work. Then a slight humming jolted me from my working trance. That was clearly Lainey's voice, but that song she's humming, made me shudder. I ran to her room, seeing her not yet asleep, but sitting on her bed singing. The tune, the lyrics, all of them was slowly draining my sanity away, so I shook Lainey's shoulders. She opened up her eyes as if snapped from a trance, then stared at me, full of suppressed anger. "You'll pay for it." It was no longer my daughter's voice, but of someone else I knew too well. Her words stunned me. I could only squeeze my fingers in terror. Lainey woke up from the intense pain I accidentally caused her. She immediately told me that she's sleeping and not remembering anything that had just happened. However, the strings of creepiness didn't stop there, because the very next day, at exactly midnight, Lainey was this time in the living room, mumbling. I rushed downstairs immediately upon hearing it. The living room lights were all off. Lainey, in darkness and sleepiness, ran over to the front door, opening it. She invited in an invisible guest. Invisible indeed, because I could clearly hear the footsteps over the floor, which gave me goosebumps all over. Lainey happily asked the guest to sit down. Then she casually poured the juice to the glass opposite her. I couldn't take it any longer, so I rushed over her, shaking the girl out of her sleepwalking trance. Yes, she was really unresponsive, not yet snapped from that trance. A sound came over from behind me, and I was startled, realizing that the juice glass had emptied itself out. I immediately dragged the girl back to her room and locked the door. That's it. I'll watch over her tonight. A ringtone rang aloud from somewhere in the room, and it didn't take me too long to spot a strange phone under Lainey's pillow. Opening up the phone, it was the pictures taken of me and my friend back then in high school. And on that phone, I could read clearly the last text message sent to that person I knew too well. It was just too much for me. I could no longer hold back my tears anymore, hugging her, and fell asleep somewhere down the line. The next morning, Lainey got up and seemed to act normal again. "Where do you get this phone, honey?" Lainey told me that she got this phone on 13F of the building I was assigned to renovate. I gut-wrenched at her word. Something bad was about to happen. That ominous entity had likely followed us home, and soon it would come for Lainey, my daughter. That morning, I came alone to 13F. The closer I got to the graffiti, with two hands holding on each other's, a sense of dread and guilt washed over me. 15 years ago, I had a friend, and her name was Emily. We're like inseparable back then. Our families were close too. My father and Emily's all invested greatly into this building project. Emily and I were very excited on the prospect of us residing together in this apartment complex. But at that crucial part of the project, my father made a huge financial mistake that heavily impacted both his company and Emily's father's. My father had no other choice but to declare bankruptcy. My family must moved out of the rundown house in the city's shantytown, while Emily's family tried to hold on, yet slowly sinking into further debt. Emily and I, we both spiraled further and further to despair. We grew to hate living in such hellhole outside of our control. On our very last text message, we decided to leave this hellish world together. One afternoon 15 years ago, Emily and we came together to 13F of this very building. Emily carried her father's shotgun. We planned to take turns shooting ourselves. Emily, without any hesitation, went first. And I was too panicked at that and ran away after seeing her turning inside out, so I left her there, alone, and not telling anybody about it. The regret washed over me. I should have been aware of that stupidity and stopped Emily altogether, but I didn't. I knelt over the wall. I begged Emily for forgiveness and for her to leave my daughter alone. Suddenly, a scribble appeared beside the two hands graffiti that read simply, "Payback." My body shook uncontrollably upon seeing it. I booked it right back home. The first thing I did was call out for my daughter. Inside her room, I was shocked, seeing all the graffiti drawn from red markers all over her walls. Lainey was holding the shotgun and pointing it to her head. I jumped over with all haste. If there's a life to end, it's mine and not my daughter's. The moment I could touch the gun, the trigger slipped and shots fired. Blood oozed out all over my body and Lainey's, and I wielded the last of my strength to carry her outside, frantically calling for help. Immediate assistance meant my daughter's stable now, but due to the bullet trajectory to her brain, she's still in a very bad shape. The horror subsided, replaced with tragedy, and the graffiti disappeared. For now, I'm still trying to take good care of Lainey. Let's hope she might have the chance to recover. The weird thing about Emily seems to no longer be there anymore. Let's hope she forgives me.
I was hired to keep an eye on a dead body that smelled really bad. I'm Sean, 36, and I live alone in Texas. My wife and son left about a year ago. I haven't seen my little boy since then. He's 6 years old now. I work as a short-term security guard. Specifically, I'm hired to guard things like concerts, conferences, events, and exhibitions, which often need a lot of security guards to keep everything safe. Or when a company's regular security guard is on leave. When a company needs to quickly boost its workforce, they'll bring in temporary employees like me. This job is pretty good for me right now because of my health issues. A year ago, I had a car accident on my way home from work. After that awful accident, I'd get bad headaches whenever the weather changed. One day, the doorbell rang at 8 a.m. "Hello, I'm Brad." The man introduced himself in a cold tone,
and looked me up and down with a sharp gaze. "How can I help?" "I hear you work as a security guard. Can I come in and talk to you for a bit?" It turned out Brad was here for work, so I quickly invited him in. Brad sat across from me, still wearing the same expression and look in his eyes. "I need you to be a security guard at my house for one night only." "Are you organizing a party or something?" $500 in cash. I'll pay you right now." Brad didn't answer any of my questions about the security job. I could see his eyes slowly shifting from cold to red with anger. But I didn't want to agree without knowing all the details. I kept trying to ask Brad questions. $1,000. Brad slammed his hand on the table, leaned toward me, and shouted loudly. I was really worried and scared, but with the amount of money Brad was offering, I couldn't say no. I needed the money right at that time. Thinking the night would go by quickly and the job was something I was used to, I agreed with Brad. He immediately put $1,000 in cash on the table and then left. I had never taken a job with such a weird deal and attitude from the customer. That day, I couldn't shake this constant feeling of anxiety and insecurity. I wasn't exactly thrilled about making such a large sum of money. That night, right at 9 o'clock, I arrived at Brad's house. It was a decent house, but it felt a bit gloomy and cold to me. The lights in the house weren't all on. Only a dim light was visible through the window. I hesitated for a long time, but still didn't ring the doorbell. I had considered returning the money to Brad and turning down the job. "You're 20 minutes late, Sean." I was startled when Brad's cold voice cut through the silence. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can." "Come in. I don't have much time." Before I could finish, Brad interrupted me and went straight into the house. The atmosphere inside the house felt even colder than it was outside. Everything was pretty modern, but it looked like it hadn't been used in a long time. So there wasn't a party. I must have been wrong about that. There was no one else in the house except for Brad. I noticed that the wall was covered with pictures of a woman. So many. It was like an art exhibition dedicated to her. "This is my wife, Megan." I turned around, startled to see Brad standing right behind me, his eyes full of affection as he looked at pictures of his wife. His eyes were completely different from when he came to my house. Brad must really love Megan. Wait, Megan looked familiar to me. I wasn't sure, because the light was too dim to see everything clearly. I moved closer to get a better look at Megan's picture. "Here's what you need to do." Brad startled me again. I turned around and walked over to where Brad was standing. His eyes turned fierce and intimidating again. "Protect my wife's sleep." I froze, my emotions in turmoil when I heard Brad's strange request. He went upstairs and told me to follow him. The closer we got to the upper floor, the darker everything became, making it harder for me to see. I walked slowly, and the darkness was accompanied by a faint but strong enough stench that made my nerves react. I reflexively covered my nose, and Brad immediately turned to look at me. The darkness cast shadows over his scary eyes, making them stand out even more. The black shadow made the whites of his eyes stand out, highlighting the dark red veins. Without looking at me for long, Brad continued down the hallway to the room at the end. The creaking sound when Brad opened the door gave me chills. At that moment, I thought about running away, but my thoughts and actions didn't line up. Following Brad into the room, the stench was so strong it was hard to breathe. In the middle of the room was a bed with someone lying under the blanket. The room was filled with pictures of Megan, Brad's wife. This time, I was sure she looked very familiar and was trying to remember where I'd seen her before. Brad walked over to the bed, gently pulled back the covers, and revealed a badly decomposed body with bones and flesh mixed together. I couldn't say a word. I backed away and pressed myself against the wall, my heart racing. "Megan, I found the person. You can rest easier now." Brad's words made me think he was definitely crazy. I rushed to the door, shaking the doorknob with one hand and dialing the police with the other. I shouted Brad's address to the police, telling them I was being held captive by a madman. A sharp pain shot through the top of my head. I felt warm streams running down my neck and face, and a salty, fishy taste filled my mouth. I passed out immediately and had no idea what happened next. When I woke up, I was tied up in a kneeling position on the floor. In front of me was the bed with the decomposing body that Brad had propped up. I was scared out of my mind, but couldn't move or scream. Next to the body was a photo of Megan and a bouquet of roses. At that close distance, I could see her face really clearly. "This is..." Brad gritted his teeth and his eyes widened. "The one you caused the accident and then ran away from. You left her in agony and she passed away." "That's right. This face. It was that woman." "Do you have any idea how much pain I've been in for the past year? When I saw you, all I wanted to do was make you feel the pain my wife had to endure. I've lost everything." Brad screamed with hatred, pain, and helplessness. I was at a loss for words, with no way to explain that tough time. That night after the crash, I saw Megan, bleeding and quietly begging. But I was selfish. I decided to leave because I was thinking about the future and my family. In the end, my wife and son left me, and the loneliness and disease kept me stuck. Not a single day in the past year have I slept peacefully. I cried and begged Megan and Brad to forgive me. I deeply regretted what I had done. Brad couldn't calm down. He rushed at me and kept hitting my face and the wound on my head. The police broke down the door and rushed in. My vision was blurred with blood, and I saw Brad being restrained by 2 officers before I fainted again. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital. I'd be treated for a while before facing the court. I see that the names of family members are being searched a lot on the dark web. I am Beavis, 17 years old. I live with my father and mother in a small house at the edge of town. We moved into this house 2 years ago. To be honest, I don't like this current house very much. It always feels cold. That's just how I feel, but my parents don't feel that way. 2 years ago, we moved here because my parents said that the old house haunted them. Our neighbor next to the old house was murdered. Her name was Erica. I still remember her a lot. She was a warm and kind woman. Miss Erica's murder shocked the entire street at the time, but only my family moved away. My parents kept repeating that they felt scared and haunted, but I didn't think things were that serious. The old house was much more spacious and comfortable than the current one. When we first moved here, I was very stressed about adjusting to the new school and making new friends. And I met Ven, whose family had also moved here just over a month ago. Luckily, Ven and I got along quite well and quickly became close friends. My parents are very fond of Ven, and his parents also see me as a second son. Most of the time, we would be at Ven's house, and I even stayed there for a whole week. My parents don't have any issues, they're always busy. The meals cooked by Ven's mother made me gain over 8 pounds in just the first month of summer vacation. Ven and I share the hobby of sitting together for hours, each glued to our own laptop. I'm into gaming, while Ven enjoys programming. Recently, Ven discovered the dark web, and he's been wandering around it all day. There's a lot of bad content on there, Ven. Be sure to filter the information you access and receive. I don't like that he's using that website at all. Before agreeing to buy me a laptop for my 16th birthday, the dark web was the first thing my parents forbade me from exploring. I listened to my parents because I wasn't really curious about what's on there anyway. There are plenty of other websites to use, and I'm more interested in games anyway. One morning, I woke up at 8:30. As a habit, the first thing I do is check my phone. A dozen messages appeared, all from Ven. This isn't the first time he sent messages like this, so I wasn't very surprised. "Beavis, are you asleep yet? Beavis, I have something very important I want to show you. Beavis, please read the message." The content of the remaining messages was similar, and they were sent at 1 a.m. I sat up and replied to Ven's message with just 3 curt words. "What's going on?" Ven isn't online yet. He might still be asleep. I didn't worry about it anymore. It was probably some unusual news or a new app he had just finished programming. I took care of my personal hygiene and went downstairs to the living room. My parents weren't home. I had no idea where they had gone so early. While I was rummaging for some food in the cupboard, my phone rang. It was Ven. "Beavis, Ven is missing." Ven's mother, crying, informed me of the shocking news. I immediately ran over to his house. The police were inspecting around the house and talking with Ven's father. His mother was deeply distraught. She couldn't stop crying. When she saw me, Ven's mother repeatedly asked for help to find her son. "When did he disappear?" "I'm not sure. I didn't see him when I woke up this morning." I recounted that Ven had still been texting me the night before and showed the message thread to the police for investigation. "May I please go into Ven's room?" The police instructed me to preserve the crime scene and to wear gloves. I went into Ven's room, and the laptop, being the most valuable item, was still there. Sitting at Ven's desk, I went through his computer. Many browsers and applications were still open. Dark web. There were nearly 20 tabs open about this website. I ran out, gently locked the room door, and went back to carefully examine the activity on Ven's laptop. Beavis Miller, the search content on the dark web by Ven, and that's my name. There were at least a dozen tabs with such search content, but there were no search results. Why was he searching for my name? A heavy question weighed heavily on my mind. Additionally, in other tabs, I saw that Ven had searched for my parents' names and found some results, including a few videos. This situation feels anything but simple. I stood up and left the room, and Ven's mother hurriedly asked how things were. "Did you notice anything unusual?" No ma'am, I have to go now. I'll ask around with friends about Ven." I ran home quickly, turned on my laptop, and searched the dark web. I typed in my parents' names and 2 videos appeared. Click on the first video. Miss Erica. I gasped when the image of the old neighbor appeared on the screen. She was tied to a chair in the middle of a dark and empty room. Her face was terrified, and she was continuously pleading with someone. At the 15th second, 2 other people appeared, and they were my father and my mother. The most terrifying and haunting 5 minutes of my life began. My parents slowly made their ways to Erica, and they cut her into pieces. I felt short of breath, had a headache, dizziness, nausea, and chills. So Miss Erica was murdered by my own parents. The reason my parents insisted on moving houses was also because of this matter. Could Ven's late-night messages also have been to warn me? My body trembled uncontrollably. There's one more video. I took a deep breath and played it. A man had a bag over his head. Muffled sounds were coming out, and I had no idea who he was. My parents appeared again, and they were laughing with great enjoyment. The barbaric laughter made me cry. These weren't my parents. They were holding a sharp machete and yanked the bag off the man's head. Then, I shouted, panicked and surprised.
Thank you for watching until the end. As mentioned earlier, our goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers in 2026 is still ongoing. If you enjoy these stories, please give us a hand and support us.
you.